Taiwan or China, Hong Kong, they don't understand the system. And so it's not fair that you might be held back, so we have these free college application workshops. Also want to mention that we have edible school gardens in our schools because nutrition is very important to me, so I'm very glad to see McDonald's taking the lead in providing healthier choices. And I also want to echo what Dan Lin said about foreign languages. We have a very robust foreign language program at Hacienda La Puente. We have dual language Mandarin immersion programs, and we're going to create dual language Spanish immersion programs also. Es muy importante que nuestros estudiantes, nuestros jóvenes pueden hablar diferentes idiomas. Este puede abrir las puertas de oportunidad para todos. Foreign languages are really important. 所以如果你们可以跟你的小孩子讲中文或者不同的语言，你们一定要继续。如果我可以给你们一个 lesson， 就是我真的是想跟我爸妈说谢谢，从小你都是一直跟我讲中文，所以现在我才有这么多的机会。So I'm gonna start. This is all great. Becoming a movie producer, being on the school board, running for Congress, but you do need a basic education before you can do any of that. And what I want to talk about is how do you get into a great university? And while I'm targeting Harvard University, these kinds of lessons are transferable to any kind of university that you'd be applying to. So my own background, I went to Mesa Robles in Hacienda Heights, and then attended Wilson High School. There were a lot of students who were supposed to go to Wilson, and they said, I don't want to go to Wilson. I'm going to go to Troy, or I'm going to go to Sunny Hills. And so they all left. So some of the brightest students from Mesa Robles decided to leave. And that was great for me, because then there was a lot less competition. So all these students who were supposed to be competing with me to be editor-in-chief, president of Leo's Club, etc., they were all gone. And I could just, kind of have the run of the show. So one lesson I want to give to you is that you can succeed anywhere you are. I know there's a lot of pressure to send your students to the best possible high school out there, but there are a lot of pressure cookers out there as well. If you're going to Whitney, that's great. I've met some kids who went from Whitney to Harvard, and Harvard was too easy for them because of what they went through at Whitney. They graduated from Harvard in 3 years, and it was a piece of cake. But we're not all geniuses like that. I'm definitely not a genius. And so sometimes I think it's better to give your students an opportunity to learn in a less pressurized environment. So don't feel like you have to send them to the top schools. Unless you know they're a genius and they're going to float to the top, it's better to keep them where they are in a comfortable environment and let them succeed there. So I went to Mesa Robles and then Wilson. I would say, how did I get into Harvard? I would have liked to talk to Dan Lin to see what his story was. But briefly, obviously I had good SAT scores. I had good grades, but I didn't get a perfect score. I wasn't ranked #1 in my class. But I did do a lot of extracurricular activities, and I think that's really important. Extracurriculars will really help you stand apart. The sad thing is, if you are a Asian American from Southern California, in particular a male, that's the toughest demographic to be applying to schools from. It's just too bad. There's just a lot of really talented Asian Americans out here. So you have to find ways to stand out. So some of the things that I did while I was in high school was involved in Paw Prints, which is a weekly newspaper. I was an editorial cartoonist and then rose up to be the editor-in-chief. I was really involved with community service, Leo's Club, which is a branch of Lions Club. We helped grow that into one of the largest Leo's Club in the United States, and also involved in academic decathlon. So I think having the grades and the SATs, that's one part, but to really set yourself apart, you have to do all of the other portions as well. So, we are up. Okay, next slide. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm going to talk about what colleges are looking for, the application, how do you craft your application, how do you prepare for the SATs, letters of recommendation, the interview, the essay, and what you should consider when you're applying to college. Okay, so what are colleges looking for, right? They're looking for students who can handle the work academically, obviously. So that's why your grades matter, and that's why your SAT matters. But you should know that the average GPA for someone at some place like Harvard or Stanford, like the percentage of students in the top 10% of their class is actually lower at these Ivy League schools than it is at the UCs, places like Berkeley and UCLA. Because private schools take a more holistic approach towards accepting students, while the UCs is more of a numbers game. So you do need to have the basics, but what colleges are also looking for is someone who can help round out their student body. So let's say they found out that someone like Dan Lin, who was making amateur, films when he was in high school. Well, at Harvard, we have a film society. We have a visual environmental studies major. We want someone who will be taking on those responsibilities once they arrive on campus. There's a newspaper at Harvard, the Harvard Crimson. And I'm sure when they looked at my resume, they said, oh, wow, Jay, he's an editorial cartoonist, won a couple of state awards. If he comes to Harvard, he will probably fill that niche. He will be the editorial cartoonist. Or there's Harvard might have a band. We need someone who plays the trombone. Okay, we want someone to fill that niche. We want someone who will be able to play basketball. Well, hey, Jeremy Lin, right? Perfect. He was able to apply to Harvard, and that was actually his safety school, right? All these other schools turned him down, these Division I schools. But because Jeremy Lin had that skill, basketball, Harvard took him. So schools want to have a very well-balanced student body, which is why if everybody here is playing violin and playing piano, that's not going to help you a whole lot, because there's plenty of people who do that. So you really want to be able to break away from the pack. What else colleges look for? Someone that, you're going to be a roommate. Are you going to be interesting to that roommate? Am I going to learn if you're my roommate? They want to make sure that you can contribute something to student body and to the dorm experience, because that is so important. I learned so much from my friends. So they want to make sure that you're interesting. So keep that in mind as you're building your resume. And diversity. They want to make sure that it's a diverse student body. They can't have it be 50, 60% Asian. And that hurts us as well. It's important. When we grow up in Los Angeles, we're surrounded by Asians. You think you could practically live in some communities and never have to speak English. I mean, there are communities like that. But if you want to succeed in the United States, you're going to have to be able to interact with Latinos, Caucasians, African Americans. And so that's why they want to make sure you have as diverse an experience as possible. So how do you convince them? You do it through your application. Okay? So the application, it's like a resume. Your parents have all written resumes. It's the same thing. You want to be able to use action words. On this application, you're going to have a few lines where you can talk about what you've done. You don't want to waste those few lines. So you want to use action words. So, president of Leo's Club. Built the club into the largest in the United States. Vice president of Red Cross Society. Created the largest blood drive in school history. You have very, very few space to advertise yourself, so you want to use it well, and you want to use action words that jump out at the viewer. You don't want to, use superfluous language. And you also want to tell a story of leadership and growth. So, showing that you advanced from secretary to vice president to president, showing that you took on more and more responsibility in the club, that shows maturity. That's something also you want to kind of convey through your application. And so, as I mentioned, extracurriculars are really important. You also have to plan ahead in terms of what extracurriculars you wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be captain of the decathlon team because a student before me, he got accepted to Stanford. He was captain of the decathlon team. He was the only junior who was on the team, which meant he automatically, as a senior, would be captain. So I figured, okay, I want to be the only junior on the team. But then I had to plan ahead because decathlon was 0 period. And typically, junior year, 0 period, you're taking chemistry. So that meant I had to take chemistry as a sophomore, 0 period. So I was the only sophomore in 0 period chemistry, which meant I had to take bio and physics over the summer to get those out of the way. So there is some pre-planning that you had to do, but because I planned ahead and I took care of some of my classes over the summer, I was able to be the only junior in decathlon and then the captain of decathlon my senior year. And again, if you want to become president of Leo's Club, you got to start early. You got to put in the time. If you want to be editor-in-chief of the newspaper, you got to join as a freshman. So think about what your interests are, join those clubs, and it's better to be the leader and highly accomplished in 1 or 2 organizations rather than be a part of 5 or 6 organizations and really have nothing to show for it. And spend your summers wisely, all right? That's also important because in your application you have these short essays where you're going to talk about what you did over the summer or what your interests are. Your summers are the chance to set yourself apart. During the school year, everyone's doing the same thing. You're all in school. So summer is a time when you can really do something different. Okay, the SAT. The SAT is the most important test you're going to take. Unfortunately, that's still the case. You can take it, take it very seriously. Take it more than once. I took the SAT in the 7th grade. I had Tiger parents, and they insisted that I take the SAT. And when I took it in the 7th grade, I bombed it. Okay, I did really, really poorly. On a 1600 scale, I probably got like an 880, right? So under 50th percentile. But I took it again the next year, 8th grade. I bumped my score up by almost 400 points. And I don't think I got that much smarter, but for whatever reason, my score went up. And then by the time I took it as a junior and as a senior, you know, I almost got a perfect score. So the SAT is something you can practice. It's not an IQ test. The more you take it, the better you'll get. And you know, now it's score choice. There's no reason for you to not take it a couple of times. You know, don't just take it as a junior. If you are in 8th grade now, you know, consider taking it now, because even if you bomb it, you don't have to show your grade. And there's no better practice than just taking it over and over. What I did was, you know, I didn't take Princeton Review or Kaplan. I just bought a book of 10 SAT tests, locked myself in my room over the weekend, and took them over and over again. You know, that's the best practice. Some other tips that I would give, you know, I took the SAT in San Marino, even though I was at Wilson High School, because I didn't want to be distracted. I didn't want to come out during the break and see my friends and start gossiping and you know, walk back into the testing environment, you know, not with my head fully engaged. So think about doing that. Definitely drive to the location the day before, so you don't get lost. You don't want to be stressed walking in. And then, you know, basic things that you can do. When I was in high school, we didn't have the internet, right? We had like dial-up modem, AOL online. You couldn't get New York Times, LA Times, any of these magazines online. But today you can, and it's all free. So growing up, I couldn't read these things online, but you can. So a very simple way to broaden your vocabulary is to just start reading these newspapers and journals online. It'll immediately improve your own writing skills, and it'll make you more worldly as well. It'll keep you up to date on world affairs. And that can happen, that can be very handy for the interview process. Okay, letters of recommendation. It's really important that you ask early. So you should already, if you're a senior, you should already have asked your teachers for a letter of recommendation. You do not want to put them on the spot and make them scramble at the last minute. And it's better to choose someone who can tell a good story about you, who really understands you, rather than just choose your principal who doesn't know anything about you. Because as a letter of recommendation reader, we know when we read through these things if this is just a form letter or if they actually have something important to say about you. And also, provide talking points to your teachers. So your teacher's not going to remember what you did. So what you can do is provide a sheet of paper saying, well, Mrs. Smith, remember when I wrote that essay that you said was the best essay you ever read? And you remember when I spoke up in class and made that point about, you know, the Civil War, and you thought that was a really good point. You know, refresh their memory. This is not cheating, you know. They would appreciate it. And in fact, there might even be some teachers who would say, why don't you create the first draft of the letter of recommendation, and then I will edit it from there. So be prepared to write, you know, your own letter of recommendation. Hopefully they will use it, but if nothing else, it'll give them something to work from. Because these teachers, they're really, there's a lot of things on their plate. So the more you can help them, the better. And also use this letter of recommendation as a chance to explain away any weaknesses that you might have. So let's say your sophomore year or your junior year grades really took a tumble, and it's because your parents, maybe they're going through a divorce, or your dog died, or something. You know, you can use the essay as a chance to kind of, letters of recommendation as a chance to explain that. Have your teacher mention that. You know, Joseph was a great student, but he was going through some rough times sophomore year. It's not reflective of his overall grades, so I hope you'll consider that. And use the letter of recommendation to take care of those types of weaknesses. Okay, so what are the teachers asked to evaluate? Those are some of the things that they'll be asked to evaluate on the letter of recommendation. They'll be given a form, many of them, and they'll be asked to grade you on the basis of these strengths. So academic achievement, quality of writing, your maturity, integrity, motivation. There are a lot of different things that they're going to rank you on. So have that in mind also, you know, just in terms of how you carry yourself in front of your teachers. And if you are, you know, freshman or sophomore right now, maybe you want to try to develop a better relationship with one of your teachers. If you think that this is someone that can write you a good recommendation down the line, go after school, volunteer, you know, make yourself more known to that teacher so that when the time comes, they'll remember you and they'll be able to write you a good letter of recommendation. Okay, the interview. Not all schools will require an interview, but many of them will. Harvard always tries to interview everyone. Now, how important is the interview? The interview could, I would say, weighted maybe 5 to 10% of your overall application. It's not going to push you over the top if your grades and your scores just aren't there, but if you're on the margin, it could definitely help, but it could also really hurt you, right? So if you're in already, but you come to the interview really overconfident and very uninteresting, and the interviewer writes you up that way, it could really hurt your chances too. So take the interview very seriously. It's like a job interview, so you have to prepare. Do your research. You know, I've had students who come to Harvard interviews saying, "Oh, I want to become a lawyer. That's why I want to go to Harvard." When obviously they didn't realize that, okay, you have to go to law school to become a lawyer. So they're just kind of throwing things out there. Or they'll ask, well, what are the majors at Harvard? You can easily look that up online. Just Google it, right? So don't come with really silly questions. Do your research. Find out how their sports teams are doing. Find out if there was a new building dedicated to a science department. Do your research, and it'll go a long ways to make the interview more interesting. And then research your interviewer. So let's say you found out that Jay Chen was going to be interviewing you. So you Google Jay Chen, and you find out, oh, Jay Chen's running for Congress. Okay, so what I would do is I would read up on the race, and I would find out what some of the big issues are. You would find out what my positions are on various issues, and then at the interview, you'd come and you'd say, oh yeah, I'm also really interested in politics. I think it's really important that Asian Americans are empowered in the political process. I wish I could speak Spanish and Mandarin as well. And I'd be like, oh really? Wow, I'm actually running for Congress. Oh, okay, so we have this immediate connection. So, that is something you can do today with Google, with Facebook. You can stalk people and find out everything you want to know about them, and then you can, really warm up to them. So for my interview, I found out that my interviewer was African American. He was a lawyer, and he went to Harvard at a time when there were a lot fewer African Americans. So one of my editorial cartoons that won first place in California was about affirmative action. So it was an essay. It was a cartoon in favor of affirmative action, so I took a gamble and I brought it with me to the interview. And as we were talking, I decided to bring up the cartoon, which is in favor of affirmative action, and lo and behold, he liked the cartoon. He was in favor of affirmative action, and I think that really helped give me a better write-up. So you can do your research on your interviewer, and it can really go a long ways. And if you're supposed to get an interview and you didn't get it, follow up. There have been some students who were supposed to get interviews. I would send them one email, and if they don't respond, I'm not going to follow up. I've got so many students I have to follow up with. For my interview, I actually had to follow up a couple of times, otherwise I would have slipped through the cracks. I wouldn't have gotten it. So these interviewers are people like me. We have other jobs. We're overwhelmed. Follow up on your interview if you're supposed to get one. Okay, the essay. Hello? Is it still working? No? Okay, so the essay. The essay is your chance to show your writing skills, and especially today, thanks to Twitter, writing skills have seriously declined. Colleges still emphasize it. For my major, I had to write a 120-page essay, so if you think writing a 5-page term paper is bad, you're going to have to write a much longer one once you're in college. So, your essay is a chance to reveal something unique or compelling about yourself. You really want to make the essay stand out. I've read a lot of essays where they talk about just volunteering at a soup kitchen or writing about how much they love piano practice, things like that. It's not going to stand out. We read hundreds and hundreds of essays. My essay was about how I went to Nepal. My parents were import-exporters. We went to Nepal, and I kind of got a chance to view the poverty and also the consumerism that America had kind of brought to that country. And afterwards, when people would say, when they were thinking about all the applicants, oh, Jay, he's the Nepalese kid, right? So that makes you stand out immediately. But if you write an essay that everyone else is writing, it's really not going to help your chances. So that's why I say really spend your summers wisely. If your parents can give you a really unique experience abroad or even within, inside California, you don't have to go too far. Take that opportunity because that might be something that you can write an essay on. And essays are really, really important. And again, an essay can be a chance to explain any weaknesses you might have in your application. You can write something deeply personal. I read an essay from a woman, a young lady who actually had tried to commit suicide. And it was a very moving essay, very powerful, and I was just so impressed that she had the maturity to address it head on and talk about it. So those are stories that are really going to stick with the reader. So there might be some things that you think aren't interesting about your life, but they are. So, do some back and forth with your friends. Talk about yourself, ask them what they think is interesting about you, and do the same for them, and try to come up with something that will really stand out. And again, a great way to prepare for your essay is to read a lot. So read New York Times, LA Times, etc. Develop a better writing style. Okay, so what should you consider when you're applying to college? I think Daniel Lin mentioned this as well. Study what interests you, because chances are you're not going to do exactly what you studied once you graduate. As an employer, I'd rather choose someone who got an A in underwater basket weaving than someone who got a B in economics like everyone else, because that shows me that when you put your mind to it, when you enjoy something, you do well in it. And that's basically what work is all about. So don't think you have to be an economics major, you have to be this or that. Now, if you want to go into computer science, then obviously one of these more technical fields, you have to do that. But if you get a liberal arts education, don't feel that you have to go a certain path. Don't choose your schools based on what you think your major or career will be. Choose the best school for you. Go to the best school possible. If you have a chance to go to Stanford versus go to USC for a 7-year med program, I would say you don't know if you really want to be a doctor. So maybe you don't choose the 7-year med program. You go to another school that will give you more options. What else should you consider? Get out of California, okay? Do not make college an extension of high school. If you really want to leave California, experience a new city. This is a great chance to go live in New York, in Boston, in Chicago. After you graduate, after you start working, it might be very difficult for you to go to one of those cities. And now when you go to one of these cities, you have an excuse to be there. And you really need to get out of California. You can always come back. The weather's great, but experience the rest of the United States because it's really different from what we have here. And change your worldview. Private schools are becoming more affordable as well. Right now, private schools actually offer more financial aid than a lot of UCs and Cal States. Because of all the grants they provide, it actually can be cheaper to go to a private school. So don't think that they're out of reach. A lot of these universities, if your family makes $60,000 or $80,000 or less, it's a free ride. They'll provide financial aid up until like $120,000. So do not think that these private schools are out of reach. And then, one more thing you should think about, I always push this, think about taking a year off before you go to college. Okay? Now, apply to college first, but after you get in, you can defer. And it sounds groundbreaking, it sounds crazy, but a lot of students are doing it now, and a lot of universities are encouraging it. They call it a gap year. People in Europe do it all the time. The reason why I encourage it is because the difference between you as a high school student and you as a college student is immense. No, it's not. There is no difference, really. Between a high school senior and a college freshman, there's no difference. The difference between a high school and a college, though, is immense. And so, some students, they enter college a little less mature. It takes a couple of years for them to really appreciate their surroundings and what they want to do. By that time, it's too late. You're halfway through your college career. I took a year off when I was in college. I went to Costa Rica, worked at the U.S. Embassy, and then worked at a human rights organization. Allowed me to travel through Central America. I loved it. It really helped me mature. I got to hang out with the Marines and party with them. Got a lot of that partying out of my system. So that when I came back to Harvard, that was actually the semester that I got the best grades. Because I was finally focused and I realized, okay, I want to study Latin America. Sometimes you need that. You need a little break to figure out what it is you want to do. After college, I got a fellowship to study at Peking University. So you can do the same thing. I got a job offer from a management consulting firm, and I deferred a year, and I went to China, and I traveled throughout China, brushed up on my Chinese, and really did something I would never have a chance to do later. Ask your parents. If they want to take a year off right now, would they be allowed to? Their boss would say, yeah, take a year off, take your entire career off. We're not going to have you back. So you can't do that after you start working. College is the only time where you can leave and come back to something, and it's secure. So do not lose that opportunity. Don't think that you have to graduate in 3 years. Do not rush through college. You will regret it later. And it doesn't matter if you graduate at the age of 21, 22, or 23. All right? It really doesn't matter. So make the most of your college experience. So that's what I have, interview, and Harvard should be contacting you about that. And if you can't apply early action to any of these schools, I would highly advise doing it. Oh, by the way, we have there is some literature about Harvard outside that we will have for you if you're interested. Yeah, we are having one on the 22nd in Walnut. If you visit our website, you'll see that. It's being organized by the Chinese American Association of Walnut. And on the 29th, we're going to have one in Puente. And we'll probably have a few more as well.
Is there a limit on the time to take the SATs?
Is there a limit on the time?
Like, how much time do you take it? How much time do you take a test?
Oh, well, the SAT has a certain time. It's a time test. But you have to take the SAT by December if you're a senior. If you want well, how many times do you take it? As many times as you want. Yeah. Because now you have score choice, so you can choose which grades and scores you want to send to the schools. There might be you take like 10 times, that might look bad. But, if you take it as a junior and then as a senior, twice as a senior, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, you don't want to take it too many times. You don't want to be totally stressed out over it.
Can you recommend any specific websites or sources of information that offer credible information about college rankings? Like, because some websites like charge you to see college rankings. So would you personally recommend anything that we could use?
Well, U.S. News and World Report is kind of the standard, but I wouldn't base your college choice on the rankings. Visit the college, see if it's something that appeals to you, and that's more important. You don't want to go to a higher ranked school but spend a miserable 4 years. So college rankings are, I don't think that should be the basis for your decision.
Thank you.